Yo, if you've been digging Producer Head, I highly recommend you check out the Music Production Podcast hosted by Brian Funk. You may recognize Brian from his previous appearances on episodes 15 and 16 of Producer Head. I also appeared on episode 403 of the Music Production Podcast, where Brian consistently curates high-quality conversations about all things related to music making. His guests include artists and experts across genres and areas of expertise. The conversations hosted by Brian are comprehensive, ranging from technical workflows to creative philosophies. As a Producer Head listener, the Music Production Podcast is a natural fit. Go ahead and check it out. Yo, what's up? This is Toru, music producer, entrepreneur, and host of this show, Producer Head. Welcome to my conversation with the Orchestrator. Beyond holding the Guinness World Record for most digital singles released in a day, that's 200 tracks, the Orchestrator is an accomplished saxophonist and producer out of Denver, Colorado. In this conversation, you will hear a deep enthusiasm and drive from an artist pursuing a fiercely independent path. The Orchestrator does not ignore what many would consider boring details. Enjoy this episode as the Orchestrator gives us a first-hand look into everything from music royalties to streaming strategies. A brief disclaimer, I am not a lawyer, nor do I play one on this show. That said, I hope this conversation encourages you to develop your own knowledge base on the topic. To that end, 2 books I would recommend on the topic, All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Donald Passman, and The Plain and Simple Guide to Music Publishing by Randall D. Wixson. All right, with all of that, please enjoy my conversation with the Orchestrator. What's up, everybody? This is Toru, and in a way, so are you. Welcome back to another episode of Producer Head. Today we have the Orchestrator. Welcome, man. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
As far as I can remember, we haven't really talked about practice on the show. And I think it's just such an important foundational part. It's something I try to make sure is part of what I'm doing. So what do you practice?
I mean, I practice my saxophone, trying to practice more gratitude, like in the metaphysical, I guess, sense, emotional sense. Patience, practicing patience. You know, those are 3 of my main practices, I'd say, at the moment.
Yeah, starting with the saxophone, do you have a particular routine? Are there tunes you're working on? Is it scales? Like what is your approach here? Yeah.
Like when I pick up my saxophone from day to day, I'm like either playing a bossa nova song. I'm like focusing on jazz and just been focusing on like, if you're saying scales, I'd say my scaling when it comes down to like jazz improv, but more so focused on the bossa nova genre.
Do you think about it in a structured way? Is it something where you're like, I'm working on this and it's conscious, or are you just like, I'm like with the saxophone?
It's structured because like a lot of time I'm always focusing on a project. Like I try to always have a project. Like what am I doing next? Well, how do I not stagnate? How do I continue growing? I'm a self-taught saxophonist, so constantly trying to learn. How can I get better? What's my next step as a saxophonist? What's my where am I trying to go? Do I want to be like Grizz? And then I realize, I don't want to be like Grizz. Do I want to be like Masego? No, I don't want to be like Masego. I want to be my own person. What's something that no one's doing right now? How can I be that? How can I be that more? How can I practice stuff that no one's practicing? So I feel like, when I'm like, oh, I'm playing bossa nova, people are like, I don't even know what that is. And I'm like, all right, good. Well, we'll bring it back then.
How do you seek out things to practice or decide what to practice?
So there's a specific album that I've been practicing, but I'm just learning like all of Antonio Carlos Jobim's songs that he's composed. Stan Getz, my favorite saxophonist, a Jewish American from Queens, and amazing saxophonist, and I kind of want that sound that he has. And I'm a dual citizen of Brazil. It's a fun fact. So I was born in Brazil, and I feel like it touches my soul a little bit with the bossa nova. So I feel like I just want to kind of emphasize that. So when they all came together, they created The Girl from Ipanema, which is one of the most covered songs ever. And that's speaking for itself. It's like sometimes I feel like people do these things for a reason. It's like how Yesterday from the Beatles is the most covered song ever. It's like some songs are timeless, and like the more you can recreate it, the more you can bring people back to that soul of this originality is important. but I feel like sometimes you get so far from it that like when you come back to it, it feels original again. And I feel like that's where I'm at. It feels so like I want it to touch people in the way it touches me, but it's like you have to change it visually, aesthetically. So that's kind of my job, is to like figure out how I can personally practice being different with this bossa nova thing as well.
So it sounds like your approach is to learn tunes.
Yeah, to learn classic tunes and to variate them, to learn variation and to learn like improvisation off of those tunes. And then to practice how to bring that together, whether that be with house music. But sometimes I feel like I said, like the house has become a, its own thing. So I'm like, how do I bring samba and bossa nova back into the electronic sphere as well? But then sometimes I'm like, do I really want to be there? Do I want to? But because like sometimes I want to be in the jazz circle. I want, like I don't know how to. I'm trying to figure out how to bring that back. Like Billy Strings brought back bluegrass in such a way that was like visually appealing. He's got like, no one besides the Grateful Dead was doing bluegrass with like huge visuals. And then Billy came in and was like, I'm trying to get a huge LED screen in here with lasers. No one was doing lasers with bluegrass.
It's funny you bring him up because so I just watched the Rick Beato interview of him the other
Mm,
day,
mm.
and I really wasn't hip. I mean, I have a friend here actually who's really into him and always talks about him. And I just never really grabbed it. But after watching this interview and watching him play, and this is without even I've never been to a show. I haven't even really sat and listened to his music yet. But man, I mean, his guitar playing is really like that guy, and his story and like the way that he looks at music is really really cool. I couldn't recommend that interview enough if anybody hasn't seen it. But yeah, so it's funny that you just because it's literally just the other day, man. So I'm kind of like I'm definitely about to fall down like the rabbit hole with that guy. He's wild.
He is a psychedelic outlaw. But the point of that is like his visuals show aesthetically
Hmm.
is like incredible, right?
Cool.
It's like with Widespread Panic, when they had the jam band and they were like, let's bring visuals back, these incredible visuals, and it's like the moment that you, put the money into your performance, like what I'd like to do for my next performance is like a jazz burlesque Halloween masquerade bossa nova jazz session.
Where does that
Right.
idea come from? Where does it? Why the mix of those things?
See, because I want it to be like okay, have you listened to bossa nova? Like when I listen to bossa nova when I'm on the beach, I mean the vibe is just so different. I love the way that I feel with bossa nova, so I want to make that sexy. Because it is. Brazilian culture is the sexy culture. Like when you think of Brazilian women, you think of sexy women, thick, beautiful, voluptuous women. My wife is that exact replica of what I think of a beautiful Brazilian woman as an American woman. That's why I love her. I married her. Apart from being her brain is so amazingly beautiful, she's a beautiful woman in itself. And I think that that's the kind of energy that I want. I want it to be like powerful, sexy, voluptuous energy that I have, and I want to give people that through the jazz. But then like if we did like the masquerade burlesque, it's like it gives it the visual aesthetic that it needs. It gives it that like jazz can be sexy too.
It sounds like really at the core of what you're saying is that like you really do appreciate jazz, and I don't think you're alone in feeling like jazz is not something that's appreciated by wider audiences today. And that part of how you could potentially do that is reframing it or learning how to kind of, yeah, I mean, reframing it in a sense so that people have a chance to relate to it.
That's kind of the thing. It's like, how can I get that more? Denver was a huge jazz hub as well. And it's like, how can I get that more integrated? But I feel like even now, like the corporations have taken over some of the only jazz clubs we have out here. So it's like constantly fighting against the corpse for ownership of the music. It's frustrating.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I mean, continuing that idea of the sales piece, because you once said, I think the last time we talked, you had mentioned something along the lines of, it's important to make selling music fun. and that you feel good about your music, but that you feel even better about your ability to sell it. Can you speak more on that?
I don't remember what context I was saying that in, but I do feel good about. I think that might relate to my independence that I own my music outright.
Mm,
And I think that's an important piece of what I was saying with Russ is like independence with music is crucial so that you can sell it. Long-term passive income
mm,
is the path that I've chosen
mm,
over performance.
mm,
Okay. So I'd rather have long-term passive income
mm,
than performing all the time. And if I have to take a smaller cut with performing, because I was doing well, it's
mhm,
not like I was doing I was making $19,000 a show.
mhm,
That's pretty good. It's not like I'm balling. Some of these
mhm,
people making 20,000, but I get to keep all of it
mhm,
on top of people getting paid out for my shows. That's not even what the people that are my NFT holders are making on top of those shows. So I pay everybody out for my shows when I was doing shows. That's like 150 people that are owned of the shares from this NFT program. It was collective ownership of people who actually support me in this, and that's where the NFT Web3 aspect of my business comes from. But it's where I've always thought about things like that, collective ownership, everybody mutually beneficial, long-term passive incomes, people royalties. I'm such an advocate for things like that, and I feel like a lot of people aren't because they don't want to keep you educated on that. um, Performance royalties, even when, how to upload a set list from your show. And then, a lot of the time people are like, what do you have a set list? Why would they ask that? Well, it's because if you send them your set list, these venues actually have to upload it into this publishing queue, and this is what you played, and then you get paid to perform those at the shows that you're playing. And it's like people just don't know these things. But, we've been talking about that forever. So someone like me has done it. And that's where I feel like forever I'll be able to sell my music forever. I don't need to ask anyone for permission. I can take all my music off Spotify if I want to. I can go sell it. I could throw it in the trash. I can never perform again. I could make sure no one hears my music ever again. I own it. No one can exploit or benefit off of me in any way, shape, or form without my explicit permission. And I think it's important for people to realize that, and I've trademarked my business as well. And it's important to highlight that because I've gotten in arguments with people, serious arguments about trademarking and serious business like situations. And still some of these people haven't trademarked their business. And you wonder why that is a thing, but it costs money. It costs money to do this. Okay. And it costs even more money now um, to hire lawyers. It costs even more money now with this administration in charge. And then you have to protect your assets. So are you more interested in the party long term or are you interested in the actual art? Because when you make this a career, you need to focus on how you can sell yourself forever, not how you can sell yourself in the short term just to play at this certain show or play at this party. Because a lot of people, they'll get a great gig and not know how to leverage that for later. And then, they give up. It's hard. You get this great gig. Kudos, dude. You played for free. Wow. And eventually it might weigh out. But I'm in a very grateful position. That's why, I was saying earlier, I try and practice gratitude because sometimes like I was trying to impress people I didn't even like. They don't care. That's why they say like don't take it personal. Don't. So you may as well figure out how in every way, shape, and form you can make money that corporate can't get their hands on. How can you exploit the system like they exploit you? How can people don't know sound exchange? Very important, crucial information for people for independence. Song trust, very important resource for independence. Your ASCAP and any of your publishing, BMI, creating a publishing ID on top of creating an artist publishing ID, having a publishing company at the same time as having your artist publishing ID, which are two separate entities, right? That one collects, September through June, and the other one, collects the other few months. So then I'm making a paycheck every month from SoundCloud, from Songtrust, from Sound Exchange, from DistroKid, from distribution. I start talking to people about that, and they're like, I have no idea what you're saying. I'm like, well, it was awesome seeing you play at Red Rocks. even though you have no idea what I'm saying. Like, it was awesome to see. I really hope the long-term career, pays. I hope that was enough. And like, that's the thing. Sometimes people, that is enough for people. Like, that one show was all they ever wanted. And I hope they get it.
What made you make that choice? What makes you go, okay, you know what? I want to take this maybe less glamorous strategy from the outside and pursue this more long term and build the foundation to make money from royalties.
I saw a friend of mine who couldn't pay for groceries. And like, he was like, well, at least I get to live my dream playing music. I was like, yeah, but don't you think you want to eat? Like, I get what you're saying, but like, you can do that too. Like, there can be both. And if you were just listening to if you were focusing a little bit more on the algorithm apart from performances, but that's the thing about relevance, right? Everybody out here wants to stay relevant. They have to stay at the forefront. So they always want the next show. Give me the next show. Give me the next best show. I need to sell tickets. But then in that regard, everybody becomes not necessarily even like a patron, more so like a customer, consumer to you. So then now you're in this consumer mindset where everybody is a ticket sale. And then you're not focusing on your actual music. You're just focusing on selling tickets. Now you're selling tickets for pennies on the dollar. So where's the ownership there? Where is, like, unless you know how to leverage more money out of that experience from that show, then don't take, like, it doesn't make any sense for you to do it for any less money than for no money even. Like, you have to be able to leverage. That's the thing. Like, people who say they don't do it to make money, then you should just stay at home and perform at your house then. Because like, I'm going out there to make this a career. So if I'm performing in front of people, it's because I practiced and these people paid good money. Less is free, and even then, but these people paid good money to see this performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make money. They're paying me money most times off this. So it's a very big exchange. I think it's important financially for people to talk about the money that they make off these shows. It's very important. But when I'm there, money's on my mind. But how can I leverage these people to make more money? I like that. I want to connect. How can we connect? How can I create more of a career? I'm here to be a career musician. How can I create career out of this? Well, you have to leverage. So how can I go talk to these people? Unless you're ready to go turn those people into followers, then you're in front of the wrong people. It doesn't matter who you're in front of. So I've seen people play at Red Rocks. They've had a great show, great career, right? I've seen people with, which is why it doesn't make sense. I've seen this, this is where like my illusion fell from the industry. This dude, great guy, got to play at Red Rocks, really had no place there.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really make much original music, but he's a really nice guy. But his manager was like blowing down with the other person's manager. That's how it is out here. So regardless, doesn't matter how much money you're making for court. It's whoever's there out in the party, ready, blowing down, drinking, whatever. Whoever's there, that's who's going to get the opportunity. That's where people are out here. So the guy, even with 10 followers on SoundCloud, right? He got the gig. Now, this is an amazing gig. This is 10,000 people. How are you going to leverage yourself to, even apart from making money off these people, what's next from these? How do you take that and sell your next show out? People have no answer for that because
Right. Well, actually, I think you point to something really important, right? Which is exposure alone in mass it doesn't solve a problem. It does create at least momentary attention. So I think the question that I have for you, and maybe especially about the streaming piece, right? Because there are plenty of producers listening to this who make music and have it on streaming platforms, make it available publicly. And as everybody is well aware, Spotify doesn't pay a lot per stream. So, what advice do you have, given all the experience that you have and everything that you've learned? What are important places to start or things to think about in building a foundation for yourself to harness any kind of attention that you are able to achieve and like be valued and receive value in a financial sense for art that you've worked really hard to create and share.
You're right. Attention in mass is momentary. How can you leverage that? Now, when you say Spotify doesn't pay very much, they pay decent, but they only pay half of what a song's worth. No one knows that. A lot of people actually know that. I should say that's unfair. The masses that are musicians do not know that Spotify is only paying 50% of a song. That's only 50% of the distribution master. That's not even Apple. That's only Spotify. So if you were listening on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, the big three right now when it comes down to streaming music, whatever you're on, or Tidal. I don't know who really listens ever to Tidal. But whoever's listening on these streaming platforms, right? That's only 50%. So if you were to get 1 million streams, it's 0.003 sometimes. Sometimes it's 0.004. Sometimes it's 0.002. Depends on who's listening. Depends on how long they listen. Depends on how long the song is, right? Depends on if they bought it off Amazon. Depends on if you got the iTunes streams. Any of that, it's only 50%. Now, the other 50% comes from publishing, which is 15%. Then there's sound exchange with international performance royalties as well. And then there's song trusts, more royalties. There's 4 big things that create 100% of a song. Spotify is only accounting for a very small portion of how much that song's worth. Now, it's a large portion.
All right, so sorry, I just want to wait. I just want to make sure just like that we recap this a little bit, because I think for some people this is going to be the first time that they've heard this, right? And so what you're talking about is when a song gets streamed, the royalty, if we think about that as 100% of the pie, that's actually the way that laws and music work, is that 100%, the responsibility of it is divided across different parties to track. Spotify's capped at 50% of that responsibility. Am I saying that right?
Correct. You're 50% of that responsibility, but that doesn't account for 50% of what the song's worth. All of the streaming platforms will account for that 50% on this side. That's just when people say I'm getting paid off the master. If you hear any interview, Kanye is like, I want to own my masters. Masters account for pretty much most of what the song is worth. 50% on the streaming side. When a song is streamed, it gets divvied 50, 15, 15, 20. That 50 is obviously worth more than those other 3.
And so the 15, 15, 20 that you're talking about are the publishing royalties, the public performance royalties, things that are monitored and collected by performing rights organizations, and like you mentioned, song trust
But
and sound
PRO
exchange.
is that 15%. Then there's the other 30%.
So
that is from sound exchange and song trust.
So the disclaimer here is, we're not lawyers here, but just so if you haven't read about this, but this is like, if you're a producer listening to this and this is the first time you've heard about this and this is all new, like go read about the different breakdowns of royalties, et cetera, through this. So
what I'm saying is the truth, though.
Yeah, no,
you have to register for all of these platforms. Now, if I were to think about how to get my exposure out, so I don't draw too hard on this, because if someone wants to do the research, like you said, it's very important that this is all taken care of before you release a song. But you can do it later. It's just when you're asking about the masters and people are wanting to fight for their masters, they're trying to fight for that percentage of over here. Because sometimes someone like Taylor Swift, who owned all her publishing royalties and then re-recorded the songs, when you own your publishing, you get to re-record the song. You just rewrite it and re-record it. You can re-record it and then you can upload it. Now, if you're trying to shift people to that song instead and re-recording, now someone like Taylor Swift, she's got the platform. She can direct people in that direction, so she gets paid off of that song, not this song. So she can collect all of the masters and everything off that new recording. Sometimes artists can't do that. They don't have the financing to re-record it, the studio quality, to pay the producer, and all of a sudden, they don't own the publishing even a lot of times. So anyways,
I guess, like, to summarize, like, the quick thing to take away is that, hey, if you're not already signed up with a PRO, or you're not already signed up with companies like organizations like Sound Exchange and Song Trust, like, these are things that you are worth looking into and things that you should do. as an artist because they collect royalties on your behalf anyway. And in order to collect them, you have to be registered and signed up with them. So,
or else they just get reflected back into that company.
right, they just sit there,
Exactly.
supposedly in escrow. But anyway, as we were saying, so sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to kind of like stop and pause just so that there's a little bit of clarity around that. And then so from there, let's jump back into, okay, so speaking to producers, releasing music and things like that. I mean, I think start like signing up for those organizations like we just talked about is a great like
Well, I
action
think you need to
item.
get away from the mindset that they don't pay that much, I think is the biggest thing.
So I love it. So tell us more about that and what we should be thinking or how to better navigate this kind of situation.
Like people used to make fun of me for shamelessly promoting myself. And sometimes it's like you also don't want to um oversaturate who you're talking to, right? If you're just constantly putting something in someone's face, you should give something back. Like if you're telling people to come out to your show, you should go out to a show. Can't go to all the shows, but you should be out there. Give back to the community. So what are you doing then to give back to the community, right? Like that's what the question I asked earlier. What are you doing to reflect back on the community and how you've reflected to these people on showing up for them? Hey, I can't be out right now because I showed up here. I went here. It's not for exposure, it's just to connect with the community. I don't always need something from you. And I think that's important. I was talking about how a friend of mine couldn't pay for his groceries, but he's, I guess, liked and can get shows. Well, being
Mm-hmm.
liked doesn't pay your bills. And sometimes it does if you can leverage that popularity
Mm-hmm.
into financial gain, which a lot of times people should be able to, but they don't. So I think an important part is if you are getting shows or you are touring, talk to people, put it out there, reach out to them on social media. People want to support somebody who they see hustling. Some people hate on that. And I think that one person, like when we read the comments and then we see that one bad comment, we're like, "Ugh," and it'll dwell on us all day. Just remember that one person wants to ruin your energy because there's 100 people out there who want to see you supported and they want to support you because you're hustling and they see you working. At least you're working hard on something that's real, that's true to you. And if you can reflect that to people in your art, I mean, that's going to give you the biggest leverage ever. You believe in what you're promoting, but you got to get it out there to people. I want people to connect with me. I'm real. I'm not too cool. And that's the thing. Like I could never perform again and I'd still be okay and I'd still be making music. You've got to learn how to pivot. If you're gonna box me out over here, if you don't want me to play, if it is about, you know, narcotics and alcohol and that energy that we're putting into the corporate sphere so that you can get the gigs and your booking agents are opening because we're continuously boxing people out, that's okay. You can have that.
So if you're like, okay, instead of pivoting away from shows, what can people do to build a better foundation for themselves in the world of streaming?
Focus on the algorithm. What does that mean to somebody? You gotta focus on your own. I don't know who you're trying to target, but focus on the algorithm. Focus on what okay, if you were to focus on streaming, what do they focus on? So do you have access to your Spotify for artists? Okay, so what they look at when they send you metrics is saves, playlists, followers, streams per day, country, few of the demographics. That's your algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
How can I now use those 6 data points and market this song? So I'm trying to market to age. Well, who do I want to listen to this song? People my age, 29, to 41 or 25, 35. Who am I trying to market? So there's one, boom. Two, where am I trying to market? In town? Do I want to play in LA? Who am I trying to get popular with? Do I even have money to promote it? Right? These are the things if you were to focus on streaming, you know, people are always like, oh, focus on TikTok or whatever. You can definitely do it all. It's a lot of work. Everything takes work.
Interesting though. So it's smart. So you're using the dashboard of like as we just talked about the spot like what the high level metrics are from an artist for Spotify, and then you use that to drive who you reach out to in Instagram messages and or who you run paid promotion toward.
Exactly. So you'd have to have a reason to reach out to somebody. You don't just start reaching out to somebody even before you have a song. Songs got to be out before you reach out to people. They need something to click. They need something that is the least resistance as well. If you're giving something to somebody in person, take their phone. Here, I'll do it. Follow me on Instagram. Oh, you got to pull it up. I'll do it. Like be annoying sometimes. Like it's not like cringe, like don't be desperate. If someone asks you what you got going on, most of the times they will.
Yeah, so I love the attitude that you have there. So I want to like kind of like just push a little bit more on that and ask you about, because so when I think about, especially in the producer community specifically, right? A lot of people who make beats and instrumental music, they're generally people who are a little bit more reserved. They're not vocalists, they're not rappers, and they're not lead guitar players. And so they put themselves like, to just even to put themselves out there is asking a lot. And I think it's not to say asking, yeah. So asking a lot maybe is, but what I'd say is just like they're people that want to be appreciated, but they're not going to be people that they're just more reserved in nature, I would say, generally speaking, and it is a generalization. So dealing with that kind of when it's not as natural, I'm wondering, so for you, is it a natural thing? Because it's like, what do you say to somebody who feels uncomfortable that they're bugging people through DMs about, hey, like trying to reach out to and educate people about their music?
That's the thing I can't understand. I don't know. I don't know who that I that's where it's like bugging someone through a DM is like strange to me cuz like then like that's what social media is for. Like it's to bug someone like without bugging them in person. So like do you want to bug them in person or do you want to like be recluse and bug them on the thing that they gave you to bug them without being in person, right?
Hmm.
It's like that's how you're supposed to connect. It's called social networking, online networking for a reason. Like we're meant to connect this way because I feel uncomfortable in person. Now, if you're in person, that's a little different if you are recluse because sometimes I feel like why are you performing if you don't want anybody to be there? I've thought for the long term for a lot of things, right? And that's why I said passive income is important because they're stealing from us.
Hmm.
So if someone has this amazing thing that they are recluse and they don't want to share it with and they put it on something like the platform is now taking that amazing piece of art that you would
Hmm.
love to get out there. And unless you share it with somebody that can get you out there, like FKJ did with his buddy, no
Hmm.
one's going to see it these days. And the algorithm's only going to train itself off of this amazing piece of work and take that idea from you and put AI music out there through these playlists. And they're going to make money off AI playlists. I already see it happening. It probably is already done.
It
Okay.
is, yeah. So I don't know if you know Ted Joyo, but he talks a good bit about this, that how there are like a handful of Swedish artists that are operating under a number of aliases that are populating several large Spotify playlists. And so that they're basically, it's a way to basically aggregate and create the illusion of distributing income across various artists when they're actually all kind of under the same umbrella. So yeah, I mean, your intuition's. I mean, it's the fact that it already exists is probably, it's
No, but apart
likely
from
going
the
to continue.
artist, the platform will do it now.
That's what I'm saying. Is that
Yeah.
Spotify essentially has these people on payroll.
Exactly,
These
exactly. Okay,
artists
so
are
if they're
on the,
Swedish, that
yeah,
makes sense because Spotify's
yeah,
a Swedish company
hmm,
with Daniel.
yeah.
That makes sense. So there it is. But I mean, I can't say that for sure. We're speculating until they come out with reports. That's the truth. This is all spec. But when you're planning for the future, you got to know if that's what they're doing. Then how can I set myself apart from that now? I've got to have ownership over things, all of it. I've got to own all the music too. If I want to be able to take it down off Spotify, I need to be able to take it down and put it somewhere else. How can I make the money? And then they make the money. Like I said, like everything is about leveraging. How can you leverage your art and your creativity to monetize the same way that they are? I mean, they've monetized our art. They're taking the art. It's important for artists, if you're into this, to get yourself out there as much as possible in front of people. Even more so if you're a recluse, it's gonna be hard. Then you may as well make an AI guy talking for you. That's an option. You could create an AI bot that then goes and chats on your behalf and makes videos or something, and you don't have to do anything. I don't know what it's gonna take for people. I happen to like to get out there and talk to people, but even someone like myself's been isolating because sometimes you gotta put your head down and focus on your craft as well. Sometimes you gotta, like, come back and be like, "Alright, well, I feel like I'm not where I'm at or where I wanna be at. Let me reposition myself so I can make this money." Even more so, so when the passive income's there, that puts you in a position to be like, "Okay, well, I was doing so good at with performances, let me not perform for a minute. Let me, you know, get my live performance on. Let me get the show back on track, get some inspiration while also still getting paid every month from my art like I do." So I think that that's an important thing, which a lot of people can't you know, they can say that they get paid every month, but not thousands of dollars, which I feel like is tough for people to do because they're so like you were saying, like maybe turned off by the fact that Spotify pays so little, but it's only one part of a big pie. So if you know how to get the whole pie, it's not so little. When I'm making, it looks little, but then like every few months when you're making like $2,000 off Song Trust, you're like, oh, that's where the rest of the money is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, streaming is challenging because it is still very much like a volume business, and that you need to have a quantity of streams, right? So it's a challenging piece, but I think the attitude and the spirit around being proactive and using what's available to you in terms of the data and trying to see what you can do on your own and connecting with people and developing real fans is a really positive message and something that is available to everybody.
If you want to put your art out there, you at least get it out there on the platforms. The platforms are there for you to get it out. Obviously, like, people can hate, but I was making 0, you know? And, like, before you get there, like, you're making 0, you're like, "Oh," like, you try to get there as much as possible, I should say. I'm not trying to say, like, you try and get as many things, but you put your eggs in each basket, and one of them's bound to hatch. And I think that it's important for people to recognize that, like, the more that you diversify your portfolio as if with any business, the more money you're going to make regardless. So whether you're doing performances, well, on top of that, get your performances up, but then don't slack on streaming because then you're going to be left behind when someone's like, "Oh, great performance. Where can I listen to your music?" Then you're going to feel like my numbers don't reflect where I should be for this performance. If I'm playing at Red Rocks, I should have at least 1,000 followers on each of my platforms. If I don't, then I'm looking kind of goofy and it's going to be hard for me to sell my next show. Even if I played at Red Rocks, that's going to become old news. Like you said, it's only like there for a second, but the moment that's gone, like you're going to have to work back to that energy, that momentum. Like, just because you were there doesn't mean you can get there again, and even if you can get there again, like I said, like, is it worth not eating and, like, being broke forever? Because when you can't perform anymore, which they cut performances off very easily at one point. When you can't perform anymore, then what?
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this episode, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Remember, Producer Head grows thanks to listeners and supporters like you. So if something here resonates, take a second to let us know by following, liking, subscribing. Your support means everything. By subscribing and sharing, you help us grow the Producer Head community, which allows us to continue bringing you incredible conversations just like this one and opens the door to even more exciting guests in the future. Let's keep building this together. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, so I think an interesting point. I mean, you brought up diversification, which I think is a really interesting concept. And I think the challenge that it presents when you're one person or an independent artist without a team is when you're working on one thing, you're not working on anything else, right? And so how do you think about managing that time well, or how do you strategize around balancing your efforts across the different things? Like what we've talked about so far includes sort of this passive side, a live performance side, as well as kind of practicing and being in the studio also.
I think it's important to focus on one and try and get yourself up financially for one, unless you have a job that pays well.
Hmm.
I mean, dude, finances run everything. Like I can't express how important that is when it comes to a long-term career in the music industry. Finances. If you got finances, then you got time. Time is
Hmm.
money. If you got the time and the money, pay your bills because that's one
Hmm.
thing. A lot of time people are focusing on how to pay my bills.
Mhm.
So they're focusing on how many performances I can do. So like you said, if you're doing that, then you're not gonna be focused on making the music that you want.
Mhm.
I had this dude um, that I know who said he put like $13,000 into an album. I'm not even sure how he did that. It was very strange. People are spending money on the wrong things. They're spending money on the wrong people. They're spending money thinking, like I said, to impress people that they don't even like,
Mhm.
to get to a place that they don't even know where that is. Is it a lot of the time out here in Denver, that is Red Rocks.
Mhm.
That is, the pinnacle of performance. But also it's like, you've got people performing at Red Rocks that don't even own their project outright. Someone could trademark their project tomorrow and it would cost $4,000 to fight that. That's a serious thing. I feel like people just aren't prepared for. And when you put someone in that position, you've got to think about things like, how can I be set up so I have the time to handle all this stuff? It takes finances. And when you're set up financially on one thing, then let's focus on the next. I feel good about my performance. I'm making money on performances. But the one reason I stopped so much on performances was because performances can be canceled, especially you saw it with the pandemic. That was the first thing to go.
Mhm.
Going out was the first thing to go. So,
Mhm.
I can't imagine that that's not going to be the second thing to go, at least the next time. So, when I was locked up, not being able to perform, and my performance income from like $35,000 a year ended, stopped, then I start, wondering what's my next move. I got to focus on people are still listening to music while the world burns up.
Mhm.
So, how can I focus on the algorithm? And it's not even just like Spotify in terms of streaming, it's algorithms in general. Because whether it's social media, how can I get my music in front of you immediately? Because you get paid off Instagram,
Mhm.
pennies. You get paid off TikTok, pennies.
Mhm.
But all those platforms together will add up. If I'm making 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, after 10 of those platforms, $200.
Mhm.
Right? And if that's just from social media, but I'm only making that like I'm making $20 off Instagram, I'm making $20 off Facebook, I'm making $20 off TikTok, I'm making $20 off Threads, I'm making $20 off Twitter, I'm making $20. Then you got that, and that's one. And then you get streaming. So say you're making like $1,000 off streaming, that's $1,200. And then you get song trust every few months. So that's just from distribution, not even song trust. That could be 200, $400, depending on if you were making $1,200 for streaming, reflective of, 300,000 streams a month. Now, how do I get to 300,000 streams a month? Well, you gotta talk to people. Get out there in your neighborhood. Go be like to your neighbor, hey, my neighbor Larry. He'd be like, "What are you doing, Brandon?" He's 80 years old. I'm like, "I'm a saxophonist, Larry. Listen to my music. You got Spotify?" No, but I know how to use YouTube. All right, well, then I got a YouTube video for you. Go check it out. Like, you gotta talk to people. You gotta go out, go on a walk with your dog, go talk to the neighborhood. If you don't wanna talk to people in person, message them. "Hey, man, I just put this new song out. It's kinda trash, but I'd love for you to listen to it." You know? I'll check it out." And then you gotta do that like 1,000 times. And I have whole messages, Instagram stopping me every day being like, "You messaging too many people. We're gonna block your ass." I'm like, all right, well, like that's real life." And it's like people don't do that enough. And then when I do well, people want to knock my hustle like that's not how it went. That's exactly how it goes. And then, in a year you can make $30,000 off streaming. And that's it. And then if you're making 19,000 off your major performances, and then you're making 4,000 per private event, you got 10 private events. That's a pretty good year. So you got 10 private events. You performed one show that made you almost $20,000. You got $40,000 here. You got another $30,000 from streaming just because you were out. And then at weddings, oh, I see that you do wedding guitar or whatever. Do you also have music online? Of course I do. And, go check it out. Here's my card. Follow me on Instagram. Send me a message. I'll send you a sticker. And then, you get you get the discount stickers off Sticker Mule. So they'll send you messages. 50 stickers for $29 only this week. Then they give you these little guys. So then you can message someone on social media. Yo, If you follow me and you send me a screenshot, I'll send you a sticker. Mail, snail mail, and then someone gets something in snail mail. That's like a rarity. You get a letter in the mail with a sticker. People are like, wow, this guy really cares about his art. I'm just putting that out there. Like, this is real stuff that people could be doing. And like, I'm putting game on to people. I've told people this exact same thing.
Yeah, I love the spirit of it, man, and I do think it speaks to
You
like,
have to have spirit behind it.
well, yeah, I mean, and I would even frame it like this, right? Like, let's say you're a producer and you're not living off of your music, and you have a job that's paying your bills, and you take everything else aside and only talk about the streaming piece that you did, and you're able to build up a streaming piece, like that's a substantial piece of passive income that can impact your life in a way. And like we were talking about, when you're making music in your home, if you can do it well, you can do it very inexpensively. You're not spending $13,000 to put out your album. So, right. And so I just think it's an interesting perspective that we don't talk about much on this show. So it's really cool that you bring it up. And I think it's and I also appreciate the transparency, man, in terms of just sharing like, hey, it's like it's not glamorous, but here are things that you can do. And people, instead of waiting for something to come to you, you can do a lot with what you already have available to you. And I think it's a really positive way to look at it.
That's a perfect way to say that too, because I didn't even mention my highlight, but I did do this Guinness World Record thing, right?
Yeah,
And
talk about that.
it was a way to do something that I didn't have to wait on somebody for. I didn't have to ask permission.
Mm.
You apply online. Anyone's going to get verified as long as they've got a plan on how they're going to
Yeah. So
execute
real quick,
their.
can you talk about what that was up front for people who may not already know like what the record is that you won, and then go into the
So
backstory
I
a little
was
bit?
awarded most digital singles in a released in a single day,
Mm-hmm.
which was 200 singles released, digital singles released on all streaming platforms in a single day.
Yeah. So okay. So now, just like I just wanted people to know what it was. So as you started to talk about what the story is behind it, that they understood what it all kind of bubbled up to.
So that was
So,
it.
yeah.
And I didn't have
Yeah.
to go even outside to do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. There's so many online records that you can do, but there's also so many things as a musician that you can do to set yourself apart. So if you were say, hey, I feel like I'm not getting paid enough to do this thing, let me try something else. How can I get my price up without having to open for this artist or having to, you know, suck this dude's toes or something? How can I get up there? Then you set yourself apart. The world record thing just helped me to set myself apart from other people. It's just one thing to remember about me on top of everything else. How can you make yourself appealing to people if it wasn't just I don't think people like me for my looks. They like me for my music. So if they like me for my music, how can I continue to emphasize that that's what I do? I'm a musician. People want something to like validate themselves. Set yourself a record then. Do something for you. And I think that that's important for people when it comes down to music, whether it's performances or streaming. There's so many thousands of things that you can take route wise for music. That is such an accomplishment. Say you're working on music for a movie, you're doing scoring. And then you're like, yo, I worked on Sinners, Michael B. Jordan. Wow, that'd be crazy. No way, dude. Did you get to meet him? No, I didn't. I just worked on the song. Oh, well, that's cool too. But wow, it's like, but that's not performing. That's not streaming. That's not publishing. That's just something. That's a whole different world. And there's 1,000 worlds out there for music. And, apart from the record, I think that the biggest thing is, to realize that it's not just one route that you can take to make massive amounts of money off music. There's so many. And the more that you can get into all of them, the more that you'll be set up. If one fails, if I break my finger, saxophone's done. So what do I do? There's so many things that can happen in life that people don't plan for. Say you break all your fingers, now you can't produce.
Mm-hmm.
What would someone do as a DJ? You've got to be set up. You've got to be set up. And I think that that's my biggest emphasis on anything I do is independence from corporate influence. Independence from corporate influence is very important in any music career long term, especially when AI is so prevalent that a lot of things that we do will be replicated. How can you set yourself apart? I'm going back to jazz. My question for people are, apart from what are you doing in your community to like stand out or to make yourself known or to give people an opportunity for performances, what are you gonna do to stand out from AI and to not feel like a corporate carbon copy just like everything else? How can you what's the difference? What makes you different? Really, like what makes you so, different as a musician, as an actual musician? That's how I feel about myself. I'm grateful to be a musician. I look at you, you play guitar, musician. Wow. I feel like that is even more of a rare thing these days than ever. Because it's like anyone can beep and bop on the computer, which is an amazing thing because not everyone can beep and bop, I guess.
So, how
But
did you find what that thing is for you?
I knew I wanted a long-term career in music, and I know financing is an important aspect of that. And I didn't start bringing, I started playing saxophone based off a vision I had. I don't want to go too deep into that, but it was spiritual for me. So that's where I knew it's an interesting thing. I'll play saxophone forever, but do I think that I'll be a musician, a career forever? No. That's why passive income's important. That's why even basketball players don't play basketball forever. There's a lot of passive income that goes into that. What are you doing after basketball? Let's think about it like that. What happens after basketball? How are you going to make money and use all this asset leverage that you made off your amazing basketball career as a second, say, like as a second string basketball person, right? And then how are you going to leverage that into a long-term business like Shaq? You spend some money. You figure it out before you leave. You like Shaq, you buy Papa John's with the money that you got from music before you leave. Like you become a pundit. You start like talking about Ben Gay and whatever he has was icy hot. Then you start doing things like that, like with me when it comes down to, I'm about to celebrate 2,000 days alcohol free. Now,
Congratulations, man.
I just
Yeah.
invested in thank you. I just invested in a bar called Soft Bar in New York. I bought some shares in a bar, and I'm like, I'm thinking long term, things that like align with my values and like, who I am as a person, my integrity, things I don't have to do to compromise my integrity. That is an important phrase. Compromising your integrity, and a lot of people out there are compromising their integrity for short-term gains in this industry. And they're being burned, and then they feel bitter or resentful later about why they didn't get on this gig or why they picked the wrong path. And like I said, I was taking things personal because when it comes down to money, it is personal. Sometimes you wonder why these people who tell you that they're your friends, they embody their corporations, but it's not personal. We're all here trying to get our own bread up. So when you can focus on your finances and know that I owe no one, that is so crucial. I don't actually have to ever play again and I'll still make money. I don't actually ever have to be like indebted to somebody, or they didn't have to see me do something to leverage over me to like, it's sort of like this manipulative blackmail exploitation. That's freedom. And when you're truly free as a musician and you didn't have to compromise your integrity and you were doing I didn't have to drink to make money. I was able to invest in this bar and feel comfortable and buy a car and I own a house. I don't want to wish any ill will. I just have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So I've planned for the worst long ago. Now I feel like I'm able to feel comfortable and actually make art for art. I don't owe anyone anything. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm married, been married 3 years in June. I've been with my lady for 7+ years, almost just as long as I've been playing saxophone. The more that you can just feel comfortable in your own skin, I think a lot of that has to do financially. It is important, you know. Um, then you don't feel indebted to people. You don't feel like you're selling out certain aspects of yourself. You feel like the streaming doesn't matter. Even if that were to stop, I've got another idea. And you've always got to have just like the momentum and the motivation to feel confident in yourself. I think that's important.
How do you stay motivated when, the career that you've chosen doesn't really have a particular finish line and there's so much work that kind of doesn't end? How do you stay motivated, or how do you think about that?
I think that's an entrepreneur thing. I think you just know that like you are the only reason you're getting paid. So, when it comes down to doing things like that, you've got to think long term. Like, if I don't do this, I don't eat. What's my next big plan? And I think, it's kind of like Ed, and Eddie, where you've always got to have, he called them scams, but you got to have a scheme
Hmm.
to get yourself up. You've always got to have a plan, and that's why I say I always have a project on my end.
Hmm.
It's like you always have to just sign yourself up for projects to keep yourself motivated. You got to be confident in the path that you chose.
What do you do on days where you don't feel like it?
Play Super Smash. I don't really never feel like it.
Right, but it sounds like if you don't, like it sounds like you don't force it. Like if you're in a place where you really don't, you're like, all right, I'm going to give myself the time to play video games, or I'm going to give myself the time to enjoy a hobby of some kind that isn't
I don't
work
play
or
video
music.
games like that hard. I gotta
Hmm.
be real. I play
Hmm.
like Super Smash is so quick. They're like 3-minute battles.
Hmm.
So if I'm ever feeling like I'm lost, I play 5 battles only for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Hmm. And that's enough to
Um,
reset you.
yeah, but I also don't feel like I'm ever like, and that's the thing about time and money. It's like I don't feel like I'm pressed. Maybe in a little bit I will be, but at the moment I'm not.
To me, that's even more interesting. If you don't feel pressed, but you maintain this really high level of activity and output.
Sometimes you just have to reflect on how well you did, right? Like I set myself up to get paid. So I get paid every month, from my music stuff. So it's like sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like so pressed to always be creating. I put out 200 songs last year. You know, right now I'm like, I give myself a little bit of a break because I worked so hard. I feel like you got to, and I work on other things. Like I do own a house. Like, that's not a flex. That's just to say I have some other priorities sometimes that I give myself because I also have to focus on my family and my house and like work at home. Maintain like yesterday, it was pouring rain, so I had to take off the gutters and like take while it was raining, and then I collected all this rainwater, which was great, But then I had to like do this while it was raining, so I was getting soaking wet. Oh my god, it was so annoying. And I was like, man, this is home ownership right here. But I did it, and I was like, these are moments where it's like, all right, I felt like I wasn't pressed to do that because I am getting paid.
Hmm.
And I just think of that as like in the ether. So sometimes I'm like, all right, well, you know, like I said, it's like hard to like not feel pressed, but to also stay motivated because I love practice. I practice almost every day. I don't know. It's important to just like not feel so pressed, but you have to set yourself up to not feel pressed. So I was pressed for a second there. I was hustling, hustling, hustling. Now I don't feel pressed, but I'm still hustling, but not pressed. And I think that that's the thing too. Like money will attract you, not like it will attract hard work as well as like not being pressed, but also like, I was also didn't want to exploit people. So I was trying to figure out a way of not how not to exploit somebody to make money like a corporation and put people on. And then I realized, oh, people really didn't care. They're not going to put you on if you put them on. So, why even worry about that? And then I started getting all reflective in my head on like how I can, you just gotta like I feel like isolating. You gotta put your head down and hustle. Like that's the only way. You can't keep going out on Friday. I learned that I was selling more tickets on social media than I was on Friday nights and spending less money because I'm only just talking to people on a free social media app for one. And two, anytime you're out, you're spending money. So you're spending just as much to try and get no one is buying a ticket at a show. Very rarely is someone buying a ticket to another show at a show. So that's the last place you're gonna try and sell somebody to your show. You need to talk to them to like in other scenarios or on social media where it's like I said, the path of least resistance, just a click away to buy a ticket. When you're like in person, unless you have a ticket, which has become so less apparent, it's hard to sell. So like, I don't know, just like the motivation comes from just being able to like, it's less work these days. And I feel like people don't realize that. It is. It feels like it's less work than it was to make $30,000 than it used to be off social media. But maybe that's not for everybody.
Yeah, it's. I appreciate the transparency, man, and you sharing that perspective. I think it's really interesting. We've kind of just glossed over the fact that you just dropped 200 songs last year, right? So I think I don't have anywhere near that cumulatively release, let alone like kind of let out at one place, right? So I think it just like what I'm curious about is I think that there's like underlying process things that are really interesting to talk about. So for one, it's like Were you like, I want to release 200 songs, and so I'm gonna like set that as a goal? Was it I just realized I had a lot of this back catalog? Because what I'm wondering is like, if you think about it in an average sense, it's sort of like just under 4 songs a week to be producing, and not just producing, but like mixing, mastering, etc. Right? So what I'm curious is like, what's the story behind getting to a place where you're like, hey, I have 200 songs that I can drop at once?
Oh, well, I mean, I had a bunch of songs I feel like that were unreleased for years, over an 8-year period since I first started producing. I mean, I have a song that I released that was like back in the basement when I first started 8 years ago. I named the song that. Like, you gotta just put stuff out. Like, I know that, like, my main top songs are gonna stay in the top song category. So, like, these songs, if you like them, and some of them, like Freshies, like, people really like that one, it resonates, so people will listen to that one more. But, like, a few of these songs, like, some of them are older, some of them are new, and, like, it's not I had thought of a way of how to put together a bunch of songs and, like, release my old catalog of just, like, random project files. With doing it in a spectacle. Like, how could I do it in a way that, like I said, set myself apart? I feel like saxophone's becoming kinda like guitar. Nothing against guitar, but it's like everybody plays guitar, the campfire guitar. It's become a staple. It's like, it's one of the instruments that everyone can play, at least Oasis, Wonderwall, or something. So I feel like sometimes, now it's like everyone can play Carol's Whisper, on saxophone, and I'm like, how can I make myself just set myself apart from, everyone trying to jock the same style as Grizz even? And I felt like I was on that kind of level. And that's where it's like, I'd rather than I don't like getting put in a box. So I'd rather just do something else. Like if I don't want to do the EDM, then I'll do the jazz. Like that's what's so unique about I know I'm a saxophonist. Like I just put out a whole 4-minute video of playing sax the whole way through. I can say I'm a musician.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, a lot of people, maybe sometimes they're a saxophonist, but, like, I'm in.
Mm,
I'm in there. I put up the numbers. Like, I don't wanna have to feel like I'm forced to be over here, and that's where I did the Guinness thing. It's like, now I've got a one up. I got on the news, I
mm,
got a bunch of press over it, which was amazing, and it helped to emphasize that, like, I'm not just some random guy.
mm,
I've got a little bit more of credentials than other people, apart from selling out shows, which it feels like, not everyone can do, but they act like they can. You know, I think it's important for any musician to just set
hmm.
yourself apart. If you feel like you're stuck or you feel like you're like falling into a saturated market, what makes you different?
Yeah.
And this one little thing makes me slightly different. Apart from being I feel like sometimes, like, I've got a little bit, of a one up on some people. I can play all the saxophones. I don't just play tenor, I play baritone, I play alto. I don't just I'm not just a saxophonist, I also have a Guinness World Record. I'm not just a saxophonist, I got Best of Denver awards. I'm not just this, I've got number 1 on iTunes Jazz. I'm not just this. It's like the more credentials that you can put on yourself, you'll feel better, especially long term.
When people ask you what you do, how do you respond?
I say I'm a professional saxophonist.
Mm,
I think that creates a conversation. I would say I am.
hmm.
I've gotten paid professional prices.
Hmm.
Um, do I think of myself as a professional, like someone like this dude I know who's got a doctorate of saxophone? No,
Hmm.
but because I'm a self-taught saxophonist. I learned off YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, but I do have musical background, so I'm not gonna discount the fact that I just learned off YouTube.
Yeah.
I played guitar before that, and I
Yeah.
went to school for jazz composition and performance. I know how to read music, but
Mm,
I did teach myself, also off YouTube,
mm.
how to read music. So it took myself teaching myself and practicing to get to school in the first place. But I dove in, and I would stay up real late, real annoying. My mom was like, "Oh my god, Brandon, turn the guitar down. That shit's annoying." I'd be like, "I can't sleep." So I was just learning how to play guitar. I did that all the time. So that's why I was able to I feel like pick up I'm able to pick up things very quickly cuz I dive in type thing. So when I talk to people, I think I did the work as a professional to get to that professional level. I would consider myself a professional. I'm playing pro songs. I've hit a pro level financially with the money I've made off individual shows. So I that's what I tell people.
Yeah, congratulations, man. I mean, to teach yourself, I mean, with the background or not, to just commit to learning an instrument from scratch is as anybody who's tried will tell you, it's a lot. And I think it's cool. I hope people listening who are thinking about, oh, I want to pick up my first instrument or a second instrument or whatever it is, that they take this and think about that, because it's, if you sit down and do it, why not?
You always suck at first, and maybe you don't. Maybe you're a natural.
Yeah. So what do you tell yourself when you're what like during that first year and you're experiencing, like, man, like, you don't, like, you've got, because you have the music experience, like, oh, I know I don't sound good. How do you keep yourself going?
You just got to take it out. If you're starting to perform, you want to bring it in performances, bring it out immediately. Suck in front of people. That's all I can say. Suck in front of people. I used to have a girlfriend who would like make real dirty faces at me, which was like, I was like, I'm just learning. I was like, why are you even here listening to me practice if you don't? She's like, well, I don't even know what she said. I don't know why she was there. Like, even thinking now, I was like, why were like, I'm practicing. Like, I'm not trying to hang out if this is like what we're about to do. I got to practice. I think the thing during the first year is like, you either do it or you don't. You got to do it. Like, you got to be in there practicing. You got to talk to yourself, get yourself hyped up, not feel so pressured. Like, if your girlfriend starts looking at you, just be like, whatever. That's kind of how I was with. I was like, you know what? And we broke up. I was like, this is what I'm doing. And it might be annoying, but this is what I'm doing. And she was like, you're just so focused on music. And I was like, whatever. I want to play saxophone. It spoke to me. You know, it spoke to me and I need to touch it. I need to be around it. So you just got to, and you got to know that you're going to suck until one day you don't. And one day I got through a whole song and it kind of sucked, but I was like, yo, that was pretty good. Like, I was like, wow, like that sounded just like it, but maybe it didn't. But I started recording myself too. I think that's important because you think you're going to hear something differently when you're like playing.
All right, so with that, let's jump in and have some of these, like, kind of shorter form questions. I mean, feel free to be as short or long winded as you want. Which DAW do you use?
Ableton.
3 favorite albums.
Oh, Love Supreme by John Coltrane. Gets Gilberto by Stan Getz and João Gilberto. And The Chronic by Dr. Dre.
Best music related purchase you've made for $100 or less.
$100? I would say my interface, my Focusrite.
Bang. Something you bought and never used.
Nothing. I use all my equipment.
Wow. One habit that gets in the way of your music.
Comparison.
Something you wish more people understood about music and or production.
You know, that it's important to focus on the art being the art. If you're going to choose to be a musician, if you want to choose to be a career musician, it's a whole different, that's the whole podcast.
Somebody else you'd like to hear from on Producer Head.
Someone I'd like to hear from on Producer Head. I've got a friend named Boogie Lights. I'd love for you to talk to him.
Favorite movie.
Interstellar.
Advice that you've received and found useful.
Don't take it personal.
Hmm.
It's all business, baby.
What character from a book, movie, or show do you most identify with?
Matthew McConaughey from Interstellar.
And I've never seen that movie, so I'll have to go watch it to understand this.
I do believe in myself as a main character, but I feel like it's his attitude that he's got. It's like there's no impressing, like getting in front of people and impressing them these days unless you've got like the in. So it's like it's hard to compare yourself in front of, but I think I think I'm pretty good. I think I'm main character energy is what I feel like. And I think that's an important thing to have. And a lot of people have that as musicians, which is like the ego. You've got to have some ego to perform in front of people live in general, right? To like have that sort of ego to be like, I'm gonna go out there. It's an ego thing. It's an egotistical thing to do. No disrespect to the performance aspect but that's something I feel like I've come into thinking like, it's become more of an ego thing. Trying to cater to people And I feel like people do that. They play to the crowd, right? So it's like I've tried to get a little bit more away from that and like focus on the art for being the art. Uh, if I'm putting something in front of somebody, it's because you can't get that. And I put something in front of you, you can't recreate. Go find it somewhere else. I doubt you'll find it. And that's where I feel like Interstellar Matthew McConaughey is.
No, that's cool, man. I appreciate the context around it. So, the question that was left for you from a previous guest: do you have any equipment that you have to use and hate to use?
Have to use, hate to use? I hate using wires. Oh man, I wish they'd make it wireless. But if it had to be something, I would say wires. I like my equipment. I got good stuff. Yeah, I hate wires. Wires are my biggest. Even just when you were like, "Yo, we got to set up this mic," I was like, "All right, let me get these wires out." I was like, I got a bunch of wires, but I am very organized with my wires. So I'm not sure if you can. I have like a bunch of Velcro on all my stuff. Organization with wires is super important. I hate wires. I will express that. I hate wires. I hate them. I actually have this for like my guitar. They're like wireless. This is like the one thing that I can use that doesn't have any lag in it with my Ableton live session. But it starts interfering if I get a bunch of them. So I only have the one so that I don't interfere with like my sax mic or like cross interfere with like a vocal mic. So then I recently got two Shure things. So now I have a Shure vocal sax mic or like instrument mic and a vocal mic wireless.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe I'll have to talk to you more about that. Maybe I could play with that for my guitar. Never messed with anything like that. Where do you want to send people, man, in terms of socials and is that our best place to connect with you?
You can go to my website, theorchestratormusic.com, or you can follow me on social media at the Orchestrator Music.
Anything else you want to share with the people before we get out of here?
Let's free our chains from corporations. They've got us bound. They've got everybody locked in this system. We need to break free from the corporate control over music. And maybe we never will. Same way I feel like we've never broken free from the grips of the masses, the elites. They've kept control over every sort of aspect of music. And I think sometimes it's important to highlight that a lot of electronic music samples beautiful black excellence, black men, and we need to highlight how much value their culture has brought to our electronic music industry, as well as the music industry in itself, because it feels like sometimes people will create these dynamics, but then use people's sampling and then not give them credit, right? It's like, how can we sample Biggie and I know it's Biggie, but then I don't credit that it's Biggie, and I'm making money off Biggie, so I'm leveraging and exploiting Biggie's voice to make money off this cool beat I made, but then I don't give any credit to that artist. But then I claim that anybody else who exploits people is, even worse or something. It's like, but you're doing the same thing. I don't use any samples in any of my music. Any of those 200 songs, not one has the sample in it. Think about that. Fully independent, no samples. Every single song. Go listen. Every single song, not one sample.
Yeah, man. I mean, congrats on everything that you've done, man. Thanks for coming here, just sharing your energy, the hunger, for coming through, man. And just, yeah, I mean, I think anybody listening, it's just so clear, like the level of energy, the conviction, the passion, and also, man, just the straight up transparency with everything, in your own life. Thank you for sharing the time and for being that way with us here. This has been Toru, and in a way, so are you. That concludes another episode of Producer Head. We will catch you on the next one very soon. Appreciate y'all. Peace. That's a wrap on my conversation with the Orchestrator, his approach to building long-term passive income through music royalties and maintaining complete ownership of his own catalog offers a different perspective on sustaining a music career. Whether you agree with his methods or not, there's no denying his commitment to independence and financial literacy in the music business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. This helps Producer Head find its place and its people. Without you, there is no Producer Head. Thanks again for tuning into Producer Head. Subscribe and join our community over at producerhead.substack.com, so you never miss an episode. Substack subscribers receive exclusive access to the bi-weekly podium, curation of my favorite discoveries on and offline over the past week. You'll also get access to Producer Head Bars, where I share the best of what's been shared with me to help you and other producers in our community grow. The podium and Producer Head Bars are designed to provide immediate inspiration and direct application in your creative process. So, subscribe at producerhead.substack.com to receive real inspiration and ideas you can use to elevate your own process today. If you care for the craft, get your exclusive access at producerhead.substack.com. This episode was co-produced, engineered, and edited by Matthew Diaz. Big thank you to him. From Producer Head, this is Toru, and in a way, so are you. Peace.